Welcome to week one of ModPo. Laynie Brown and I are here to describe a little bit about it. We won't go into too much detail. We invite you to get right into it. Remember, you're reading a poem. If there's an audio, there isn't much in week one. There's only one audio. Listen to the audio, then watch a video of us discussing the poem, and then go to the discussion forums. So week one is Whitman and Dickinson, and I know we agree about this, Laynie Brown. We think that Dickinson, Emily Dickinson and Walt Whitman are proto-modernists. They are leaning toward the innovations of what will happen in 20th and 21st century poetry. There's so much else in the 19th century, particularly in the United States, that we find kind of narrative and boring and kind of topical. What is it about Whitman and Dickinson that's different from so many other poets of their time?
Well, with Emily Dickinson, there's an infinite a way that we can understand her poems. So no matter how many times we read them, we're never going to say this is what it is. We're always going to come back. And every reader, and every time they come back, brings different readings. And so that is one vein that continues in the trajectory of the poems that we're going to
The poems are open rather
look
than
at.
closed.
They're open and they're precise and spare. Whereas Whitman is following a different trajectory that is much more based in the sentence and the line and expansiveness.
Our point in week one is that both of these poets are radically innovative, but they're radical in very different ways. So this week is an introduction to a course in which most of what follows from the Dickinsonian intense and language-oriented mode by the word and by the phrase, but much of it, the enthusiasm of the beats, for instance, the radical inclusivity of the week 10 conceptual poets, comes from Whitman. So we think that these two are combined a really great introduction. And maybe what we should do for a second is just riff on the differences between the two, and then end with the similarities, because I think that's the surprise. So let's play a game.
Okay.
Let's go back and forth. What's one difference?
I would say that where Emily Dickinson is inward and quietness, that Whitman is kind of excitable and sociable.
Great. Dickinson is intensive and Whitman is extensive. Okay, I'll add one. Dickinson is interested in radical condensation. She's not interested in giving you 3 examples. She's interested in focusing on one example, which is often metaphoric, and she dives deep into that one, whereas Whitman loves 5 examples. In fact, he would give you 50 if he could.
Great.
Your turn.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I imagine Whitman running through the city at this momentous pace that keeps increasing and accumulating meaning as he goes, whereas Dickinson is, in a way, doing the opposite. The meanings are intensifying, not through that extensive meandering.
What I'm about to say might strike people as a criticism of Dickinson. No. I am a huge fan of Dickinson. Whitman is an anti-elitist. He wants everybody to understand everything he's saying. It doesn't happen, and there's no such thing as a really great poem that creates that situation. However, he is interested in trying to reach everyone. Emily Dickinson talks about her House of Possibility as really only for the visitors who want to give it a try. So when we say the word elite, which we do in one of the videos this week, we don't mean to criticize Dickinson. We mean that Dickinson is what we call discerning. The word discrimination used to be a neutral word. It isn't anymore. But Emily Dickinson is very discriminating about her choices and about what the reader's experience could be. So there's a difference. Should we do one more?
Well, I want to complicate that and say that we're going to set up all these binaries, which, if you look more closely, none of them are really true. It's just a place to begin the
It's a heuristic. It's like teaching.
Right, because we could argue that Whitman is not democratic, and in our critique that we have framed with a poem by Divya Victor, we can see some of the problems that arise in calling him a democratic poet. And if we look at Emily Dickinson as a mystical poet, you could say everybody's included, everybody is one. So they're both. It's both true and not true.
So the course begins with that binary. It proposes a binary, and then at the end, with Divya Victor and also just our discussion, because we have a video about the differences between the two. We want to implode those distinctions so that it drives you toward week 2, which we'll talk about in another video. But weeks 1 and 2 send you toward a dichotomy that we plan to talk about throughout the course, and it never gets resolved, which is such a great thing. Let's take just a second and talk about why Divya Victor is there. I'll start, and you can comment. So Divya Victor, a contemporary poet, a friend of the Kelly Writers House, a marvelous person, has written a poem in response to Walt. And what she describes Walt Whitman as doing is essentially extracting resources, right? And because of her affective affiliation with, for instance, post-colonial Indian culture, she's interested in how it feels at the level of the word to have Whitman extract everything from another place. And that it complicates the wit. I think she really loves Whitman, but she also knows that there's something kind of too aggressive about that attitude toward language. Any thoughts on why Divya is in there?
Well, she's making a brilliant commentary and critique of Whitman and also celebration of Whitman by writing through the influence of these writers is something that we're going to also see throughout the course. We're going to see how each writers are responding to what came before them.
So one little warning about week 1, it may strike you as you go through week 1 that there are only a few poems each week and that it's all very straightforward. Actually, when you think about it, given the videos and all, week 1 isn't that much more work time for you than the other weeks. It just seems so. Yes, it's a warm-up. And we hope that week 1 takes you directly to week 2. We hope you enjoy it very much. We love Whitman and Dickinson. And some days I'm much more of a Dickinsonian, but I do admire Whitman's attempt to embrace everything and to include everyone, even though it becomes a kind of a problem at certain points. Thank you, Laynie.
Thank you.